All right, so official welcome to our PR Masterclass with the PR extraordinaire Emma Diffen, who is sitting next to me here. This is Ben talking, and Kylie's online, as we mentioned before. So we hope that
Hello.
by the end of this, you're going to rock your PR and you'll know exactly what is newsworthy. So we're going to jump straight in, and we'll start with a quick top 10 from Emma in our first 30 minutes, which is really just to get you thinking and to get your head in that space of PR. And then we'll open it up to questions. And hopefully, you've all had a bit of a browse through the ebook that Emma pulled together for you. If not, it is attached as a handout on this webinar, so you can download it. And that goes through the sort of technical step by step of how to pull together a press release. So we're not going to cover a lot of that today, but we're open to your questions at the end. This is more about just finding the newsworthiness and how to create a great story. So let's jump in. So a little bit about Emma, for those that may not have got all the details. So 20 years of strategic communications. And Emma started her career in the Department of Defence. So she was over in Washington, D.C., working on all their crisis PR for 9/11. She's also worked for the Australian Federal Police on the Bali bombings and the Boxing Day tsunamis, as media manager for the Victorian Bushfire Reconstruction and Recovery Authority, and more recently as the Director of Corporate Communications in one of Melbourne's major public health services. Oh, I'm exhausted. That's a lot of crises. So Emma now works for her own consultancy, Peritus Communications. She's also a sessional tutor at Deakin Uni, and as you'll learn throughout this webinar, she's got a little, well, not so small side project that she's just launched in the last few weeks, which is on a completely different plane, and as we're all probably aware of being one of those slashies where you're like an accountant jeweler. Well, Emma's a PR guru, Whole Foods lunchbox creator as well. So that's a bit about Emma. So I'm going to hand over to Emma now, and she's going to talk you through her top 10 PR for small business to become PR rock stars. Now, what we'll do is save your questions to the end, and we'll cover them all off there. All right, Emma, over to you.
Thanks, Binny. And hi, everyone. Lovely to be with you today, and thanks very much for having me. So I think a lot of people always kind of get a bit confused about what PR actually is. And in terms of the sort of the definition, there are a number of them, but I think really getting into it, it's all about sharing stories. Like a lot of people, there's sort of event management, there's strategic comms, there's all sorts of stuff, but ultimately it's about sort of communicating what you do with the people you want to do it with. So understanding what your story is and being able to tell your story is something that goes back for hundreds of thousands of years. You look at ancient civilizations and the way that they teach the next generation is through storytelling. So PR is basically a way of storytelling. So what you want to be looking at is communicating what you're doing and why you're doing it, and really giving people an insight into who you are and what your business is and why you exist. So really got to focus on telling your story. And one way to do that is by focusing on whether it's a newsworthy story or not. And so newsworthiness is figuring out whether or not this is something that interests other people. And so one way to figure out whether or not you've got something that's newsworthy is to have a bit of a chat to some of your friends, because we're all very passionate about our own individual businesses, and sometimes we probably bore our family and friends to tears. But again, being passionate about something that you're doing is really important. And sharing that information with others will start to give you an idea of whether or not you've got a newsworthy story. If they're sitting there hanging on the edge of their seat and hanging off every word that you're saying, then I'm telling you right now, there's probably an element of newsworthiness in there. So some of the things that you can really focus on, and I think particularly with if you're looking for a newspaper angle, particularly with the suburbans, so like if in Victoria, for example, your leader newspapers, and even the daily tabloids like the Herald Sun, the Daily Telegraph, is really focusing on finding a human element. So figuring out how can other people relate to this story? What is it about me or my business that has that personal element to it? So if there's something quite unique about how you started, and here's an example. So for for my business that Binny was describing before, I've actually had a bit of a sideline into a whole food lunchbox delivery service. So we make and deliver whole food lunchboxes and provide them to busy people throughout Geelong and the Surf Coast. Has nothing to do with PR, but food has always been something that I've been passionate about. And there's also a lovely social justice element. And for every corporate lunchbox that we deliver, we provide lunch to kids in need in some of the disadvantaged areas in Geelong. So we've had a lot of interest, and not because I'm like a PR guru who's really sort of pushing it out there. There is that human element. Here's a way of providing good, nourishing food to people and also helping some children in need. So that kind of really sparks some interest. So if you've got something that's a little bit unique about what you do, if there's, as we're saying here, like a feel-good element, is it something new? Is it quite unique? For us, for example, not many people are providing takeaway whole foods. So we've found a niche in the market and we're really hitting that. So looking at things that you do that are a little bit different to everyone else and focusing on that. And even things around whether it's the change of season. For us, making whole foods, at the moment we're very focused on salads and bliss balls and beautiful dips and all sorts of things like that. But that's very much a spring, summer type menu. So again, using, or if you're working in interior design and looking at all of the beautiful changes in colours as the seasons change, obviously different weights of fabrics, all of those sorts of things. So focusing on the time of the year as well is another great way to get your story out there. So in terms of piggybacking, I'm not meaning going and jumping on the back of your partner or and sort of giving them a smack on the bottom and sort of say, come on. It's more about looking at what's going on around you and seeing, is there a way I can sort of dovetail into what's going on here? So I loved the comment before that one of the ladies was talking about using her planning tools and using the calendar, and that's one thing that I always suggest to people in terms of PR planning is to get your calendar and look at all of the events that are relevant to you, and look at ways that you can jump on board. For example, I was working with a friend of mine who is a Qigong instructor, which is a form of martial art, and she wanted to hold a workshop, and she'd never run events or anything like that. And so when we started doing the planning, we looked at, were there any other things going on in our community? Were there any was there a bit of a vibe happening? We're looking at local social media, looking at local newspapers and finding out, look, are people really interested in particular events or days that are celebrated that we could sort of tie things into? And so finding out, even other examples back working in the health sector, we would always look at if there was like the Dietitians Association was focusing on healthy weight, then we would create events and stories and things that would piggyback off that particular event or calendar entry. So it's really important, and you're not hijacking someone else's event. You're not sort of pinching their limelight. All you're doing is giving yourself an opportunity to make a contribution around that particular topic. And one thing that we touch on in the ebook is you becoming a spokesperson on a particular area, an area that you're an expert in. And so if you're creating commentary around particular issues that are relevant to your business, then journalists will actually start coming to you potentially for comment. So this is a great way for you, even if you don't have a really big story, it's a way that you can latch on to other things that are happening in the press.
So this is at the point for those that have done packet 4, that's when you start doing your planning in your calendar. If you haven't got there yet, and some of you haven't, then start thinking about where you could place into that calendar when you're planning it some opportunities for PR once you're filling out those different events that are in there. And another example was Link's property that we've got the case study about. So they, during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, they decided to piggyback that and turn all of their residential real estate boards pink, and then approach the local newspaper with photos of that and showed that they're supporting that, and they had a whole campaign around donating money to that with every sale. So again, they looked at what was going on and how could they incorporate that into the business and then gain that media exposure.
Absolutely. And even those sorts of opportunities where you're not necessarily focusing on your core business, it just gives more of an insight into who you are, your values, and giving people an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. So next we're heading into...
That actually goes right back to your looking at your I Believe list as well. So if you remember right back at the very beginning in packet 1 when we did our I Believe list, it's a beautiful tie-in as to what your brand actually stands for by engaging in those other activities.
Absolutely. So now heading into the Trinity or the triangle. There's a few different things, ways you can relate to it, and that is basically what you want to be doing is presenting your journalist with everything that they need. The media has, and whether you're talking about local newspapers or national TV newsrooms, there's been massive cuts to the number of researchers. The journalists don't have the same access to research that they used to, and they're having to really try and cram a lot of study and research about topics into a short period of time. So if you can actually hand them something that includes a really amazing story, as well as a great visual, so whether that's in the form of photographs or presenting a photo opportunity for them to actually come to, or if it's TV, a press conference or an event that they can actually come and get some images themselves, but making sure that you've got that great story, you've got some beautiful imagery to go with it. And then the third part is having what I sort of call a third-party endorsement. So if you can find someone who will back up what you're saying, basically. So, for example, we used to do a lot of these in the health sector. And a lot of this was, and it relates back to sort of all levels of the community, where you're finding a service that's being provided. So, for example, if you were a chiropractor and you wanted to talk about the specific services that you offer, and then even finding a colleague or someone else who may not be in your field, or maybe someone you've treated, who can turn around and vouch for you and say, well, yes, I received treatment from Emma the chiropractor, and it helped me in this way, and this way. And then even having a little bit of research in your story to back that up. And then finally, some great images, and not, if there's a way to try and be creative, the giant checks and the handshake type photos, a
bit overdone.
Absolutely overdone. So this is a chance for you also to be creative and think of something that's a little bit way out, a little bit wacky, a little bit interesting, because again, a great pick is something that they'll put on page 1 or page 3 or page 5, which are the real pages that you want to be on. And so touching on making a plan, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, really sitting down with your calendar, and I do this every sort of December, January. I've actually started doing it for 2016 already. After Kylie, Kylie, you'll be pleased after you sent out the latest version of the calendar, and so I went in and made like a 2016 version, and so
we have a 2016 version for the first 6 months of the year, so I'll make a note to actually update it for the rest of we did it for a financial year.
Oh, perfect.
So I'm just making a note now. I'll go in and I'll update it for the rest of the year so we can all get our 2016 on.
Awesome. And little things like going through, and you can even and I can provide one to Binny and Kylie if it's helpful, calendars that I used to use from government agencies that would look at every major, whether it was sort of fundraising type things like Breast Cancer Month, like Healthy Food Week, all of the different events that are celebrated around Australia, and you can look at them. There are global ones as well, if you're looking at a global market. But really having a look through those and figuring out, okay, well, there are 2 or 3 events throughout the year that I can, getting back to that concept of piggybacking, that you can turn around and create a story relating to that. So it's really, and this is the kind of stuff that from a PR perspective, getting this, doing the thinking and figuring this out when you're not in a time of busyness or stress, where you can sit down and have a think and start developing some stories. And then there's also nothing wrong with writing these up, having them all ready and raring to go, and having them sort of in a file on the side of the desk. So you don't need to use them necessarily right now. But then if things are a bit quiet, or if, and we'll touch on this in a sec, if you have established a relationship with a local journo, they might actually ring you and say, hey, we're a bit light on this week. Is there anything that you can help me with? And you can turn around and say, well, actually, here's one I've prepared earlier. And it just shows that you're on the ball, that you're passionate about what you do, because you've got all of this information at your fingertips. So that's a real win there. And so, yeah, heading into point number 6, becoming besties with journos. And I think that's something a lot of people are a bit scared, because you kind of think, oh, well, if I say the wrong thing, then they might misquote me, or there might be some information that doesn't really represent what I was trying to get across. And this is where actually establishing relationships with journalists to start with can be quite beneficial, because if they know about who you are, what you're doing, what your business stands for, then it's easy for them to come to you for comment on an issue that might be relevant. So there's and also being respectful of the fact that they are 9 times out of 10 absolutely slammed and pressed for time. So if you are wanting to approach them for a coffee or lunch or something like that, coffee's usually better, because I don't think anyone has time for lunch nowadays, do they?
Look what we're doing over lunch.
Well, I was going to say, and that's why we've created delivered lunch boxes, because I know 20 years working in crisis management, I would have killed for that. If someone had have said to me, here you go, I'll bring you your lunch to your desk, I would have just about married them. So looking at things like in the first, usually on the inside cover, so page 2 of the paper, if it is a paper, you'll often find at the bottom of the page they'll have their deadlines and contact details and things. So that's one way that you can get in touch. Ring the receptionist and say hi, or first of all, if it's a paper, read the paper, start following these people on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, having an idea of, because we're not all serious all the time, we'll all have little jokes and things, so get a bit of an idea of who the journalist is first, and then you'll also see in that little box on the inside cover, there will be their deadlines, and that will give you an understanding. So if they go to print, if it's a local paper and they go to print on Thursday, then Tuesday is going to be absolutely bonkers, because they will be trying to get everything to bed to get to the printer by sort of Tuesday afternoon to get printed ready for distribution on Thursday. So you ringing up saying, oh, yeah, hi, I'd love to take you for a coffee and just have a catch up. And they'd be like, yeah, you've got no idea about who I am or what I do. And so, but if you ring maybe on like a Thursday or a Friday when the paper's just come out, and you can say, here we are, can I grab you for 20 minutes and we'll grab a quick coffee and I'll run you through what's going on. That's much more likely to receive a positive response. So being respectful of other people in all aspects of life is just something that is really important.
And just on that, one of the because I'm out of Melbourne, and the biggest paper for me is the Geelong paper, so the Geelong Advertiser, and they have a magazine in there which is kind of like the weekend magazine called the GT magazine. Look for some of the hashtags. So if your newspaper's really into using social media, they'll have a hashtag. So the GT magazine has My GT Life. So often when I'm posting Instagram images, I will actually tag them in, hashtag My GT Life. And I've got coverage in that GT magazine in their little snippets area or a short little story, and in my local newspaper as well, because I've actually tagged them into something that I'm doing or a new product that's been launched or along those lines. So have a look for those hashtags, and every now and again when you think your post might be newsworthy, just pop it in there and see it work for you.
Can I give an example of what I did this week as well? So Slow Living magazine sent me a copy of their magazine, and I noticed that one of our gorgeous kin, Wendy, who's on the call today from Jira Jira, posted a photo of her organic garden and was talking about slow food. And I left a comment on Wendy's Instagram post about her slow food garden, and I tagged in Slow Food magazines, saying I think this could be something that you were interested in, and then they've picked it up and then have said to Wendy, oh, we love this, can we regram this on our account? So that was an example where, you know, it also helps the magazine actually curate content for their own feeds just by being on the same page of the things that they talk about in the same way that they talk about those things.
Yeah.
So that was just another example of kind of, you know, PR just purely on Instagram.
Yeah. Absolutely. And even I'm experiencing that myself. And just as Ben was saying, like with GT magazine, Ben tasted one of our beautiful lunchboxes last week and Instagrammed it and tagged in GT, and then they contacted us and sort of said, hey, we've heard about your lunchboxes, we've seen it on Instagram, we'd love to do an interview with you. So and sometimes it's a little bit of that overlapping. So you might be like pushing things out and doing a great job, and then if someone else sort of, regrams or retweets or whatever, it's just that that I guess another person who is a trusted source is turning around and saying, hey, you know what, I've experienced this and I think it's really awesome. So, and that's part of...
It's like that third-party endorsement that you talked about, Em.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in terms of our next area, in terms of the collaboration, and that is something, we're all collaborating here right now, and this is something that looking at your strengths and other people's strengths, and it's a really fantastic thing to be able to talk to other people, whether in your industry or in completely different industries. But if there's a way that you can cross over, even if it's in that planning side of things and going back and sort of saying, well, here's a national event that I'd like to sort of tap into, and there might be another business around you or someone who you've done some work with before, and you might be able to put your heads together and come up with something else, and that is something that's newsworthy. People like to see people sharing the love and working together and supporting each other. There's so much negativity and all of these terrible things happening in the world, and people do really, really love to see those good news stories and how people are supporting and caring about each other. I might sound like a bit of a sook, but that sort of stuff, a lot of people comment about, particularly with social media, that there is so much more beautiful, lovely stuff. And even if you go onto like the Facebook and Instagram feeds for like the Today Show and Sunrise and some of the other big TV shows, and even the radio programs and stuff, and they're constantly sharing all of those lovely feel-good stories about the person who rescued the dog in the frozen lake, or the little monkey who goes and, like, I don't know, takes fruit to the baby, all of those little cute things that you sort of go, oh, that actually makes me feel good about the world today. So yeah, really, people love the love. So jump on board.
And Claire, before we started, was commenting on how much she loved the community, and she'd started following a lot of the other kin that are doing the course. So there's the perfect place to start. If you're looking for someone to collaborate with, then look within those that are doing this course or a part of our of kin group, because I'm sure if you posted up there that you wanted to do something, who's on board? I mean, imagine what we could all do together and make a really wonderful newsworthy story.
Absolutely. And sometimes it is daunting, and you think, oh, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this, but I've got a bit of a feeling about something. Put your hand up and ask the question, because there are probably other people out there in exactly the same position thinking, oh, gee, I'd really love to do something around even just coming up to Christmas, you just never know. So ask the question. It's the best thing you can do. And I always live by the motto that the only silly question is the one that you don't ask. So ask away, people. And that's leading into our next area, which is lots and lots and lots of questions. So the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how. So in the pack, in the ebook, there's some good examples of what we're actually talking about with each of these. But when you're developing your story, actually sit down and even if you get, and this is one thing that I loved when I did the BizKin workshop, was sitting down. I get just plain A4 pieces of paper and cut them up into like quarters. And I will write who on one, what on another, when, where, why, and how, and I'll have all of my bits of paper sitting out around me, and then I start looking at the who. So is this just about me, or who am I serving, or who is benefiting from this particular thing? Who do I want to reach? So ask yourself all of the different who's who are related to this story. And then obviously the what. You've got to be really clear about what it is that's going on. The when and the where, very specifically, particularly in terms of if you're putting out a media alert or advisory to let people know that you've got an event coming up, you want to be really specific about when it will be held, so the date and the time, and also where. And if there's a way that you can give really specific instructions, that's very important. And also, and even if you're a sole trader and you're a one-man band, then bringing on board some friends or family, people who can sort of just be there to support you and stand as guides, or to sort of say, yes, please come through this way, or to meet and greet, so that when people are turning up to your event, particularly the journalists, that they know exactly where they're going. Because again, getting back to that relationship building that we were talking about earlier, journos are very, very, very busy, and photographers are probably even more pressed for time, and so because they need to get to places when there's good light, and so really making sure they can reach where you are is very important. The why, again, getting back to why the story matters, and how it impacts on those different people, and then how do people find out more information, or how do they become part of what's going on. So really answer all of those questions in as many ways that you can, and then that will really start to help you piece together your media release.
Now, as I mentioned before, we're not going to go into the nuts and bolts of writing a media release now, but if you download, or if you haven't already, the ebooks attached to this webinar, so that you can go through the details in there that Emma's pulled together in the ebook.
So one thing that we really want, and again going back to that endorsement by other people, by experts in the area, no one likes a show off, and you don't want to be telling people how good you are. You want someone else to say how good you are. It has a lot more credibility. So if there are ways that you can, present yourself as an expert to start with, but also having some other people who you can quote as well, just to really to show that what you're saying is accurate. And
so never be shy about asking for a testimonial, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And finally, looking at ways that you can be a bit different. One of the things that that I'm really experiencing now, having gone into being a small business person, and I'm studying small business management at the moment as well, and the stats around the number of businesses who really go out on a limb and they follow their passion and they follow their heart, and that's something that is very courageous. Loads of people are more than happy to just sit in a normal job with a boss and all of those things, but you guys have you're the sort of 7% of the community who has that courage and determination and passion, and you want to be doing your own thing and marching to the beat of your own drum. So you've already got something that is a bit different, and you do stand out. But if there are ways that you can really, I guess, emphasise that, then that is something that the journalist is going to enjoy about your story. So even if it feels a bit unusual, there's nothing more boring than just the same old sort of stories. Here is Mr. X and he does this and this is why it's good, and a photo of a big check or a handshake or sort of a few people standing under a sign or pointing to something. We've all done it, where you've got like things on a table and everyone's pretending to look at the big map. Yeah. So if there are ways that you can pick out some funny elements, and also look at particularly the newspapers and magazines that you're targeting, and look at the kind of photos that they have on the front page and page 3 and page 5, or if it's a glossy mag, look at the kind of pics they have and figure out ways that you can basically copy that. No one's asking you to try and reinvent the wheel, but looking at what already works and ways that you can apply that to your story, it just means that the journalist and the photographer don't have to think about that. If you've come up with a whole bunch of great pics in a great place, then you're doing the hard work for them. And once they've been to one of your media ops and they've seen how hard you've worked and the great level of information you've given them and the great pics, then they'll come again because they know that you're easy to deal with. They know that you're responsive. They know that you're clever, and and that's what they're looking for.
So this is probably a really good part when you're pulling your press release together to try and be different and stand out, is to pull out your why and all the work that you did on your why, because that is what makes you unique. Your why is unique to you. It's the reason you've started your business. It's what drives you. It's your passion. And so go back to that, because it'll help you shape a story that, like Emma said, isn't just, and I've started this business. It actually goes back to the personal, heartfelt drive that you had as to why you did it. And that's more appealing for anyone to hear about and read.
Absolutely.
Now, we've covered our top 10. Kylie, did you want to add anything more generically, specifically?
I had a couple of thoughts. I remember kind of when social was really starting to take a grip in corporations when I was working in corporate. And I remember thinking that social media was like the cross-section between marketing and customer service and PR. Like a lot of the stuff that we've covered in the course really is very usable in the realm of PR. Social seems to kind of just sit in the cross section of all of those things happening. So I think a lot of the tools that we introduced throughout the course, and like the calendar is one example and all of that kind of stuff, is very applicable in PR. And so it's not that scary to take just that one step forward to thinking about, oh, okay, I've got this content now, how can I put it into a media friendly format? I remember hearing Jo Walker, who was the editor of Frankie magazine, give a presentation at Big Hearted Business last May. I don't know if you remember this chat that she gave, Ben, when we were both sitting there, and she talked about, she's the editor of Frankie magazine, so she gets media pitches pitched to her all the time, and she was so humble and sort of self-deprecating, and she said, journos and media people are really just monkeys. We're sort of sitting there just needing to punch out a whole bunch of content on a deadline. If you can mash up the banana and make it as easy to feed to the media people as possible. So like what you were saying, Em, about having great photos, having a unique storyline, having an angle, having that third-party endorsement. If you can have all of that ready to go, then you just make it so much easier for them to pick it up and run with it. So, and that was from the editor of Frankie magazine. And she said, often at the last minute, they'll realise that they've got some distress space on one of the pages, and they'll go back and they'll look at what's sitting in their inboxes that they can use there and then, and it's having good quality images with a catchy paragraph or something that they can use and plug into their space.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really that was interesting. And and just the fact that journos are looking for content as much as we are looking to produce it as well. So don't be shy about that. And, apart from the Jura Jura example of tagging in Slow Living magazine, I also did a similar thing with my neighbour, who is Kate Thompson, who has Winnie & Co, and she produces the Baker's Drawers. And, I just started tagging in food editors and food magazines, everyone, from their SBS Feast magazine to MasterChef, like just tagging in a whole lot of different media people, like as a third-party endorsement about how great the product was. And she actually got approached by a couple of the food editors directly to get some drawers to feature in the magazine, and it had a photo shoot with a couple of them and all that kind of stuff. So I think one of my things I think is I don't tend to read newspapers so much anymore. I'm very digitally focused, so things that can really work for me in terms of giving me media exposure online in the places where I'm hanging out, that also becomes really valuable for me. So thinking about how you can do PR through social as well, I think is an interesting sort of angle of how you could do that. So the only other thing I wanted to ask you, Em, was about sending out media releases or sending out media kits. So I tend to work with a lot of small businesses who have beautiful products or, a really great design eye, and actually that's sending them a physical kit of something to get. Does that still work in terms of getting cut through, or is that sort of seen as a bit sort of novelty and they don't have time to kind of interact with it, or does it actually get cut through?
Oh, absolutely, and it depends on the product you have and who you're targeting. But everyone loves the opportunity to see, touch, feel, taste, smell. So if you do have a chance, and even things that I'm doing right now in my own small business, every week we go and deliver our lunchboxes every Friday, and we also make a few extra ones, and we deliver those to a bunch of different people just to give them an experience of what we're doing if they haven't heard of us, and even to get more businesses on board. We go and deliver little samples of our bliss balls. So again, there's absolutely, well, first of all, like, I think everyone loves a bit of a freebie as long as it's a good quality freebie, not rubbish. And it's like when you get those sort of goodie bags and stuff, and they're just full of flyers, and you read through, and then you're like, oh yeah, and you put it to the side. But if there's something to play with and taste and smell, and then absolutely. Or if there are some beautiful examples of your work, photographs of things that you've done, people like to see that, because, again, it's about establishing credibility. So people want to see that you're actually doing what you say you're doing. And that's where things like touching base and saying, hey, can we grab a coffee? And if you've got a portfolio of your work or something like that, and actually presenting that. It's a bit hard to answer in a very general capacity, but really jumping on the phone, and even my other rule, other than sort of the one about the only silly question is the one that you don't ask, is when you do jump on the phone, always ask, have you got a sec to talk? And if people are busy, then they'll say, actually, I can't at the moment. Can you call me back? And then find out the best time to actually call back, which is just a really general sort of customer service principle. But particularly with journos, like if they're on a deadline or something, then they'll just about hang up. Just ask if they've got time to chat, and then when's a good time for you to actually go and meet with them, even for 15 minutes for a quick coffee, and you can show them all of your amazing products and services.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to open up to questions now. So anyone that had a question for Emma or Kylie and I, type them in and we'll work through them in the last part of the webinar and hopefully get it all covered for you. So don't be shy. Remember Emma's motto about the silly question is the one you don't ask.
Absolutely.
So fire away.
I have one while we're waiting for anybody to put them through. because, and relates to our business, so we're in a service business, so we don't actually have a product to show per se. The idea of actually having like a media showing, that wouldn't really work for us, right? Like
so we other ideas for story ideas. So even so from a collaboration perspective, even getting together some people who you've worked with and looking at the outcomes of all of these businesses who've gone on to do great things in their business, and so giving you that testimonial, and even from the sort of diversity that you work with businesses like mine, from a PR perspective and from a food perspective, whether it's graphic artists, whether you've got candle makers, masseuses, there is that capacity where, when you all come together to talk about, well, I got this great start doing this online course, that's something that people are interested in. How can I, in the busy world that I live in, how can I go to school and learn something that will benefit me in my business? But I'm also running a family and a small business, and I have to walk the dog, and all of those things that we all have to try and cram in. So if there's the capacity for me to be doing my coursework at 2:00 in the morning or at lunchtime or when the baby's asleep or whatever, so looking at lots of different businesses from all walks of life who are all gaining from participating in this course, and so having them come together and talk about the different ways that this applies across a very diverse section of the business world, that in itself could be a story.
Yeah.
So,
oh, you're so clever.
So we've got a question from Amanda. So hi there. How many journalists should you contact, and should you offer something slightly different to each one? I've heard that they don't like to publish something if they think you've also offered the same thing to someone else or some of their competition.
Absolutely. And I kind of sort of think about, like, I don't know, back in our like night clubbing days, and you'd like see some hot bloke or hot girl or something who was like sort of doing the rounds, and you think, oh, no, I've seen you flirting with that person and that person and that person. So the whole offering an exclusive is definitely something that you can start with. There are some magazines or depending on the media, they might actually say to you, look, we're happy to cover this, but can you give us the first bite of the cherry before you approach anyone else? So if there is something, and particularly if it is like a feature magazine or something, then just talk to that one journo. And again, it's about sort of establishing rapport, depending on also the reach. If this is something that you're wanting to look at purely in your sort of suburb and the surrounding suburbs, then target the local media. They love stories about like successful small businesses or people who are doing great things in their local community. But definitely tailor things to particular people. And also, once you get to know them, you'll understand a lot more about what they want, and looking at their actual whether it's a radio show or their newspaper, looking at the kind of stories that they write, and figuring out how you can fit into that. So, yeah, absolutely. If you can tailor things to specific people, then that's good. But also, if you've got something that is like a really big news story and you want it in the major dailies and on radio and on TV, then that's when you'd want to be having a press conference to target all of those. So again, it's something that you can tailor to be very specific, but it can be a bit tricky, but yeah, absolutely. If you can offer an exclusive, then that also guarantees you some coverage.
Now we've got Claire has written a comment, which I'm going to read out because it's just gorgeous. She said, this is not PR related, but just wanted to say that you guys have changed my life, really. You've given me courage to do something creative and have been so inspiring. So thank you, Claire.
Oh,
I think we're going to cry.
I know. Really? you see the one underneath? Really? With an exclamation mark. Thank you, Claire. It's been such a delight to have you as part of the program. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's our why. Like, we're happy now and
You are our why.
into the weekend just feeling pretty good.
And I've got to say, I'm sitting here looking at Binny and she has the biggest grin on her face and it is just beautiful to watch. So that's awesome.
Now,
So,
questions.
Gloria has a question.
Yeah.
Gloria, what is the quality of images required for printed publications? Do you need a DSLR or are iPhone images okay?
And again, like, everyone's a bit different. There are, like, a lot of the newspapers and stuff, like if it's a breaking story and you're sitting there and you've got grainy footage, they don't care. But do the best quality images that you can. But if you do have, and even you can get some quite inexpensive cameras nowadays, but even like the new iPhones, the quality of the images that you can produce is phenomenal. So again, have a chat to the journalist who you're targeting and find out what their minimum requirement is. The higher the resolution, the better, because it just means that they can crop things more easily, they can edit things more easily. So in that sense, yes, the higher the better.
Is it product shots that you're shooting? Yeah, Gloria, is it product shots that you're talking about? Do you have products that you need to take photos of for a website or for a catalogue, a printed catalogue or anything like that? Could you let us know what that's for? Because there are, you can shoot on your if you've got an iPhone, you can shoot in high resolution. You just have to make sure that you've turned that on your camera. But you're probably still going to need to edit it in some way, shape or form with lighting or contrast or brightness or that kind of thing. So, but if you have products, it's really worth getting them shot professionally because you're probably going to use them across multiple touch points anyway. And social is really driven by images these days. So, taking the time to invest in having good quality images might be worth it. So,
absolutely. And even on your website, having a gallery, which most of you probably do already, but even after you've finished with the story, uploading those images, like, I would tend to keep the images that you're offering, sort of keep them a bit of a secret rather than just sort of whacking them on the website for everyone, because, again, the people who are receiving them, they're getting something that's a bit special and that's just for them. So that's always a good thing.
Now, I think we've hit the 45-minute mark and we did promise that we wouldn't take up your entire lunch break. So if there are any more questions, we're more than happy to cover them now, but they seem to have slowed down. Here we go. So Gloria, my images will probably be people stories. My business is personal fashion styling.
Absolutely, yeah. And also even just looking at interesting ways of photographing individuals rather than, and again, and you'd be an expert in this, looking at all of the different types of fashion photography and the way that different magazines present different products and different models in different things. Again, looking at ways that you can be a little bit unique. And also, if there's something that's quite unique about the person you're styling, then incorporate that into the photo as well.
One of the things that I did when I started my Leap Stories blog series was actually invite the first 6 people featured on the blog to come into a studio and have a photo taken that they could then go and use elsewhere. But I wanted to make sure that my content was being put out there in a way that I envisaged it and that I had some level of control over it. So I did go to it didn't cost much. It was a few $100s with a local photographer, which I think is, it's not that much to invest to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward for your business, particularly if it's to do with you know, personal styling and making and because that also reflects you as a brand and how you are in the world and how you help your clients put their best foot forward. So one of the things you might do is even sort of have like a bit of an afternoon where you actually encourage the people that you're styling to drop in and to have a bit of a photo shoot and to sort of celebrate, you know, where things have gone. That might be something that could work for you, and you know, they might be able to use that themselves elsewhere. But yeah, it can really work for you when you actually get some professional photos taken and you actually build it into part of, you know, producing content for your business as well.
Absolutely, that's a fantastic idea. And again, going back to collaborating, it might be something that you can do a bit of bartering and looking at your services and finding, that there might be, and it might be the fact that you might find a local photographer who wants to start building up their fashion shooting portfolio. So that could be the perfect opportunity for you guys to share the love.
I mean, Kylie and I did it with one of our workshops where we offered a photographer and her partner 2 tickets to our workshop in exchange for taking photos of the workshop for us and portrait photos, headshots for all of the attendees. So don't be afraid to ask because there's a lot of people out there happy to do that because it's a win-win.
Yeah, and we also exchanged. Do you remember, Ben, when we worked when we had our photos taken in South Melbourne?
Oh yes.
And that was actually, you know, part of the giving tree that we
at Big Hearted Business.
At Big Hearted Business.
Yeah.
So, which was all about trading. Yeah.
It was awesome. So we don't seem to have any more questions. So at this point. Jackie's said, I'm free for trade services. I'm a photographer in Wagga.
We should not go to Wagga for a photo shoot.
So I'd like to thank Emma for all the wonderful advice that she's pulled together for the ebook and to join us today for the webinar. And it's been just gorgeous working with her and sharing all of this years of knowledge that she's got. And loved this connection with our kin from the e-course live this time, which is really, really quite a joy.
Well, thank you for having me. And again, it's been fantastic for me to be able to share all of my knowledge and helping small business now that I am a small business owner. It's great to be able to look at all of those skills and look at ways that we can apply those in the small business world. So, thank you all for coming along today, and I hope that you've gotten something out of it, and that also that the ebook that has some really good examples and some step-by-step instructions on how to actually put a story together. So good luck with that, everyone. I can't wait to see in the group all of your newspaper articles and regrams and all of that good stuff. So go out and, I was about to say, go forth and conquer and make sure you get on the front page.
Thanks so much, Em.
My pleasure.
All right, over and out. See you later. See you guys later.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.